Hey, welcome back to the channel where real people share the kind of stories you seriously couldn't make up. From petty housemates to full-on family meltdowns, we've got it all. Let's dive into tonight's wildest tales. Ever had a roommate's partner treat your space like it's theirs? This story takes personal boundaries, flushes them down the toilet, and leaves one guy caught in the crossfire. My roommate's girlfriend peed herself. And somehow it was my fault. So, I'm a 22-year-old guy, and I share an apartment with another dude named Oliver, who's 24. A couple months ago, he started bringing his girlfriend, Macy, around to stay a few nights a week. No big deal at first. But then, about a month ago, Amelia came to me and asked if she could use my bathroom because Oliver's was disgusting. And honestly, she wasn't lying. I'd seen it. The tub's stained, there's hair everywhere, pee streaks on the seat, it's straight up nasty in there. It looks like one of those gas station restrooms no one wants to touch. At the time, I felt bad, so I said sure. I thought it'd be a one-time thing. Except it didn't stop there. After that, every time she was over, she'd either ask to use my bathroom or just go in when I wasn't home. How did I know? I started finding balled-up toilet paper in my trash can, and I've seen that before when my ex used to change tampons. That wasn't the only clue either. I also started finding these long strands of hair stuck on my shower tiles, and they definitely weren't mine. The worst part? I work nights, so I sleep during the day. She started waking me up just to use the bathroom. And when I told her no, she'd still sneak in when I was asleep. I'm a heavy sleeper, so I didn't always catch her, but a few times I did, and she'd act all apologetic and say she just couldn't deal with Oliver's mess. I told her, then tell him to clean it. Problem solved, right? But apparently, he keeps promising her he will, and just never does. Anyway, I'd had enough. So I bought a lock for my room and put it on. I figured, hey, if she can't respect my space, I've got to set boundaries. Well, a few days later, Oliver blows up at me. Turns out, while I was sleeping, with my headphones in, completely out cold, Amelia was banging on my door needing to pee, but the lock kept her out. And yeah, she couldn't hold it. She ended up wetting herself. And now Oliver's mad at me. Macy's embarrassed and giving me dirty looks whenever she's here, and Oliver's saying I overreacted by getting a lock. He says she's not snooping, she just wants to use the bathroom. But here's the thing, it's my room. My bathroom. And it's not just about her going in, she leaves her mess behind too. It's uncomfortable, and it's not my job to make up for Oliver being a slob. Now they're both acting like I'm the villain in this story. Look, I didn't mean for her to have that accident. I honestly had no idea it happened until after the fact. But I also don't think I'm wrong for protecting my space. Was I really supposed to just keep letting her waltz in whenever she wanted? I don't think so. When you can't even sleep in your own room without someone barging in to use your bathroom, locking the door doesn't make you the villain, it makes you the only sane one in the house. Next up, what starts as an annoying prank turns into something cruel and expensive when one family member crosses a line you just don't come back from. He thought hiding my prosthetic leg was a joke. So I took him to court. So, I'm a 33-year-old guy, and not too long ago, I let my 22-year-old cousin crash at my place. He got kicked out of his college dorm, didn't have a job, and couldn't pay rent. My folks told me it was my responsibility to help out since I've got my own house and live alone, well, just me, my 2 golden retrievers, and a couple of birds I've had since last year. From the start, my cousin made it clear he thought I was nuts for calling my pets family. He constantly joked about it, said I was weird, and treated everything like a comedy show. He's got this mean-spirited sense of humor and gave me dumb nicknames like Terminator, Robot, or Optimus Prime because I wear a prosthetic leg. I lost my real one to an infection a couple years back. I tried to be patient with him even though he left messes everywhere and couldn't be bothered to do his own laundry. 3 months in, I was already reaching my limit. Then he started pulling what he thought were harmless pranks, using my personal stuff like my clothes, my phone, and even things from the kitchen. Now, here's where it got real bad. Every night before bed, I take off my prosthetic leg. Since I work during the day, I turn in early, but he's up all night, usually until 2 or 3 a.m. One night, while I was sleeping, he decided it'd be hilarious to hide my prosthetic. I woke up and it was gone. It wasn't the first time either. Once he stashed it in the garage, another time in his room. But this time, when I asked where it was, he just laughed and said, "Check the fridge." I lost it. I screamed at him to cut the crap and tell me where it actually was, or I'd kick him out on the spot. When he saw I wasn't playing around, he finally admitted it was in the attic. He went to grab it, and when he came back down, he looked nervous. The moment I saw it, my heart sank. The socket was cracked, the adjustment parts were bent, the whole thing was messed up. He said he hid it under an old TV and didn't realize it could get damaged so easily. I absolutely snapped. I was furious and yelling, and all he did was throw his hands up and say, "It's just a prank, bro." That only made things worse. I kicked him out and immediately called my aunt to explain what her son had done and that they'd need to pay for the damages. Her response? She blamed me, said I knew how he was and still chose to take him in, so it was on me. She flat out refused to take responsibility. At that point, I told her I was serious about suing. I'm broke and can't afford a new prosthesis, and crutches are honestly miserable to use. I was still boiling with rage, and I even lashed out at my parents when they told me I was overreacting. They argued that suing family is wrong and that my cousin didn't mean to hurt me. I told them plain and simple, he caused this mess, and it's on him to fix it. They accused me of being heartless for not waiting until after Christmas to take action, saying I was making the family look bad. But honestly, I'm the one stuck using crutches right now, while everyone's telling me to just wait and let it blow over. They say they'll try to scrape some money together after the holidays, but meanwhile, my cousin gets off with a slap on the wrist again. All I wanted was for someone to actually take this seriously. Yeah, some of these folks really thought there'd be no consequences. If you've ever dealt with something this unhinged, drop your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. What would you do if someone asked you to sacrifice your child's future to save someone else's present? This next story hits that exact nerve. You won't believe why I refused to pay for my stepson's rehab. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and he has a 23-year-old son. While I get along fine with my stepson, we're not exactly close. His biological mom is still in the picture and perfectly capable, so I've never tried to step into that role. My daughter's father, my late husband, passed away when she was 7. Since then, he and I both contributed steadily to her college fund, and over the years, her paternal grandparents have added a significant amount too. At this point, her college savings have grown to around $200,000. My daughter is incredibly smart, not just mom bias smart, but genuinely exceptional. Her teachers think she's got real potential to land a spot at an Ivy League school. And the last thing I want is for money to stand in the way of her future. We make too much to qualify for serious financial aid, and even though she's applying for merit scholarships, nothing's guaranteed, especially when the competition is this steep. Financially, my husband and I keep things separate. He hasn't put a dime toward my daughter's education. Meanwhile, his son has been battling a serious heroin addiction. He's stolen from us cash, electronics, family heirlooms, you name it, he's taken it and sold it for drugs. I do understand that addiction is a disease, and I've tried to help. I personally paid $1,000 for an outpatient detox program, but it didn't work. Then my husband covered a $6,000 rehab, which also failed because his son barely attended. He swore he'd try harder next time, so my husband and I split the cost of another $6,500 program. This one looked promising until he relapsed right after it ended. I've poured in time, energy, and thousands of dollars, and we've seen no lasting progress. Now, they're talking about trying an inpatient rehab program, 60 days, $25,000. But after all we've spent, I honestly have no clue where they expect that money to come from. There's nothing left in our house worth pawning. So when they suggested taking that money from my daughter's college fund, my answer was a hard no. That money is for her future, plain and simple. It's not right to jeopardize her chances over this. It's not fair to her, to my late husband, or to his parents who pitched in to help build that fund. And frankly, I don't think another $25,000 is going to solve the problem. My husband called me a bad person for putting college above his son's life. He said medical emergencies should come first. Then, to make things worse, he asked my daughter directly if she'd be willing to give up $25,000 of her fund for her stepbrother's rehab. She didn't say anything, just went quiet, and that made him mad. He accused her of being selfish. Later, she came to me in tears, saying she didn't want to hand over the money but felt horribly guilty. I was beyond angry. He had no right to put her in that position. Emotionally blackmailing a teenager? That's crossing a line. Addiction is a disease, but draining a teenager's college fund to fix it? That's a whole new level of unfair. Up next, a grieving single dad draws a hard line after a family betrayal that cuts deep, and not everyone agrees with his choice. You won't believe why I refused to see my sister on Christmas. After my wife passed away, life completely flipped upside down for me and my daughter. I'm a 36-year-old single dad now, just trying to keep things moving forward, no matter how tough it gets. My family knows I'm struggling, but my sister? She just doesn't get it. She had a rocky relationship with my late wife, and even though she's recently started helping with my daughter, she's doing way too much. For example, she redecorated my daughter's room without even asking me first. She kept pushing for my daughter to come stay at her place for days at a time, but my kid is most comfortable at home. Then she started calling my daughter by a completely different name. I still have no idea why. I asked her to knock it off and just be supportive. Instead of listening, she told me I was just taking out my grief on her. Lately, I've been teaching my daughter to be a bit more independent, little things like brushing her hair, cleaning her room, washing her cup, and making her own sandwich while I handle the bigger tasks. My sister told me I was pushing her too hard and that I was basically dumping adult responsibilities on her. I explained that I was just helping her grow up strong, but my sister said I was using it as an excuse to avoid my duties as a parent. That led to a huge fight. I told her she had no right to butt in. The next day, a child protective services officer showed up at my door. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, wrong house, maybe, until he read me the report. It claimed I was barely home, that I made my daughter do things she shouldn't be doing, that I wasn't keeping her clean, and that I was even neglecting her schooling. For the record, she's homeschooled. I told the officer my side of the story and tried to explain that I'm doing the best I can as a solo parent. He talked to my daughter too. It was clearly a bogus report. But despite that, I was informed that CPS would still keep a permanent record on file. That hit me hard. Later, another one of my sisters told me that the one I argued with had called CPS on me. I was furious. I confronted her and told her she was acting childish and ridiculous. I said she wasn't my sister anymore. And after that, I cut her off completely. Months passed, and now my dad has started bringing her name up again. He knows how upset I still am, but he keeps saying that she feels bad and wants to make things right, starting with seeing us at Christmas dinner. I said absolutely not. But he and the rest of the family keep pressuring me, telling me to be the bigger person and not break up the family during the holidays. They say I'm being immature and that I should handle this like an adult for the sake of the family. I snapped. I told them I wasn't about to sit at the same table with someone who tried to label me a bad father. I don't care if she had good intentions or was just worried. If she was that worried, why call CPS? And now they're even asking me to let my daughter spend Christmas with her aunt, the same aunt who tried to ruin our lives? Look, I get that families argue. But calling child services on a grieving single dad? That crosses a line. I'm done playing the good guy here. I've got nothing to apologize for. Sometimes, protecting your peace means keeping the door closed even during the holidays. What happens when joy and tragedy collide on the same day? This next couple learns the hard way that not everyone agrees on how to remember it. A kid drowned at our wedding. But we still celebrated our anniversary. Last year, my husband and I got married at a stunning venue right next to a lake. It was supposed to be one of the best days of our lives, and it was, for a while. But then everything changed. During the reception, one of the younger kids at the wedding slipped away from their parents and went into the lake, even though they didn't know how to swim. It was tragic, completely devastating, and obviously, the celebration came to an abrupt end. We haven't really talked to that child's parents since then. We were never especially close with them anyway, only saw them around the holidays. Still, we're technically still Facebook friends. So fast forward a year, it's our first anniversary. I made a post on social media to mark the day, sharing some sweet memories from the wedding. I honestly didn't think twice about it. But the next morning, my phone blew up. I had 30 comments, 15 missed calls, and a long, angry comment from the child's mother calling me out. She said the post was disrespectful. How dare I share anything from that day without mentioning her son or talking to her first? Pretty soon, the whole family was arguing in the comments. People were picking sides. Some told me to take the post down and apologize, and even said we should celebrate our anniversary on a different day entirely. Others said we had every right to celebrate, just maybe keep it private to avoid causing pain. To me, I didn't think I did anything wrong. I wasn't trying to celebrate the tragedy, I was celebrating the day I married my husband. But all this backlash made me question everything. Eventually, I made the post visible only to myself and deleted the comments, hoping that would stop the drama. But then we got an email that showed the situation was way bigger than I thought. My mother-in-law sent out a mass email, and I mean a huge one. CCANG would look like 3/4 of my husband's entire family. Parents, grandparents, even the child's parents were on it. Apparently, they don't just want us to delete the post. They think our wedding doesn't even count anymore because of what happened. They're saying we're not really married in the family's eyes. To fix it, they're insisting we have a second wedding, a real one, and offered to pay for the whole thing. And since it might take a year or two to plan, they said they'll tolerate us living in sin for now. Yeah. That's the actual phrase they used. My husband hates conflict, especially with his family, and now we're stuck figuring out how to even approach this without setting off more chaos. And honestly, I don't know how I'd even bring this up to my family without them thinking it's some kind of twisted joke. One commenter online really summed it up: everyone in this situation kinda sucks. On one hand, a family lost their child, and no one can even imagine that pain. On the other, it feels like we're being punished just for trying to remember a moment that still mattered to us. But yeah, I took the post down, because as soon as I saw it was hurting someone, I knew it wasn't worth the fight. As for the in-laws, I don't even know what to say. Acting like our marriage doesn't count unless we redo it on their terms, it's just wild. The only people I don't blame here are the grieving parents. The rest? Honestly, they're just being bad. You can mourn a tragedy and still honor your love, but try telling that to a family that thinks your wedding never counted in the first place. Teenagers can be blunt, but what happens when that bluntness becomes straight up cruel during a time of mourning? My son said get over it after my wife's parents died. Now she wants him gone. 2 weeks ago, my wife's parents were killed in a car crash. Her dad was 66, and her mom was 62. She's been completely heartbroken ever since. As their only child, she was incredibly close to them. They were amazing people, and honestly, I'm grieving their loss too. The problem really started with our son. He's 16 now, but ever since he turned 13, he's been drifting away from us and his grandparents. He's kind of a loner and spends most of his time gaming in his room. When we told him about the accident, he barely reacted. I tried to talk with him about it a couple of times, but he told me straight up that he never felt close to them. Meanwhile, I still have to go to work every day while my wife's on bereavement leave. Since our son does school online, he's home all the time too. And since the accident, the tension between him and my wife has gotten worse. One example, she was crying in our bedroom and he just walked in and asked when dinner would be ready. She told him to make something himself, and he just rolled his eyes and left. When she arranged a Zoom funeral with her aunt and cousins, the only family she has left, she asked our son to join. He did, but he stayed on his phone the whole time and didn't even bother putting on a shirt. Later, she asked him if he wanted to keep anything from his grandparents' house for memory's sake. His response? A loud nope, followed by walking off. But the real breaking point came 2 days ago. I was at work when my wife called me, crying uncontrollably. Apparently, she was watching some old home videos of her parents in the living room when our son came in and asked to use the TV for his game. She told him to wait an hour and even asked if he'd like to join her. He just shrugged and said, "Mom, I seriously don't care. They were old and gonna die anyway. Can you just move on already?" She sent him to his room and then called me in tears. That night, I sat him down and made him apologize, but it was clearly forced and didn't mean anything. That only made things worse for her. Later, she told me she just couldn't grieve properly with him around, acting cold and disrespectful. She suggested sending him to my sister's house for 2 weeks. My sister has a son about his age, and they get along well. My wife said she needed that time to go through her parents' things, handle the legal matters, and try to find some peace. And while I understood why she wanted that, I told her no. I said it wouldn't be fair to kick him out, and if space was what she needed, maybe she should be the one to go. She looked at me and said she needed my support to get through this, and if she left, she'd be all alone. I told her I loved her, but our son had to come first. She spent the night in the guest room and hasn't said a word to me since. I feel awful and can't stop second-guessing myself. Grief is already hard enough. When your own kid adds insult to injury, something's got to give. And finally, a bride ditches the steak and serves up drama instead when her wedding menu sparks a full-on family feud. I served vegan food at my wedding, now my uncle says I ruined his life. My fiancé and I are tying the knot next July, and one thing we knew from the start, the food was going to be vegan. We're both vegan ourselves, and while we don't judge anyone who isn't, we wanted our wedding day to reflect who we are. We found a great vegan caterer and added a note to the invitation saying that all the food would be plant-based. We also made it super clear, if anyone had dietary needs, they just needed to let us know, and we'd make sure they were taken care of. Not long after the invites went out, my aunt gave me a call and she was not happy. Apparently, my uncle refuses to eat vegan food. She told me he needs meat. So I asked if it was a medical issue or something serious. Nope. She said it was cultural, like, in his culture, he just doesn't do vegan. Now, we all come from the same background, and none of us have any kind of meat-eating requirement. I told her that while I understood her concern, that wasn't a valid reason to bring in a separate caterer just for him. It would be expensive, and frankly, I didn't want to pay for meat at my own wedding. A few weeks passed, and the only folks who reached out with dietary needs were 3 cousins who eat low-carb. Our vegan caterer came up with a great plan for them, and they were totally on board. Once my aunt found out about that, she got even angrier. She called again and demanded to know why her husband couldn't be accommodated. I calmly told her that our menu included foods I know he eats already, things like veggies, coconut milk, nuts, grains, and he had no allergies or intolerances to any of it. I asked her, what's really the issue with skipping meat for one meal? She didn't have a solid answer, so I told her straight up, if he's that bothered, he can swing by McDonald's and eat at the kiddie table. Now she's completely stopped talking to me and has been trash-talking me to the rest of the family. She's telling everyone I'm being selfish and controlling over a single meal. Look, I know veganism isn't for everyone, and I'm not trying to convert anyone, but come on. It's one meal. One free meal. On our wedding day. Am I supposed to pay extra just so my uncle can chew on a steak during the toast? No thanks. It's one meal. One free meal. But apparently, skipping meat is more offensive than skipping the wedding itself. And there you have it, 7 stories, 7 reasons to never underestimate how wild real life can get. If any of that hit close to home, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We've got more coming soon.